Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and truly from across the continent today for another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, like several of our classes are today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. We do about 40 to 50 programs every single month featuring the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth. Now, today I'm particularly excited because we are continuing our epic series in collaboration with the amazing folks at Wild Hope. So HHMI Tangled Bank Studios produced this incredible series of positive conservation stories with some of the leading experts on planet Earth, bringing incredible, all their work together to save species and habitats globally. We just wrapped up the other day with axolotls in Mexico. We did cougars in LA the other day. We've got the ocean cleanup and frogs in Panama next week. And I'm so excited to keep it going today with one of my favorite animals and one of my favorite topics of all time. Now, before I introduce our speaker, I want to note we do have a Kahoot today. So between our talk and our Q&A, if you want to play along with a little 4-question quiz to get the excitement going, be a little more interactive, you can pull up that game pin on any devices you might have, just an extra way of making it fun mid-show. Lots of opportunity to do that, and I will bring that up again before we go live. Now, I'm so excited to welcome in Jess Mailliez today. She is going to talk to us about her amazing work saving manatees in Crystal River. So manatees are one of my favorite all-time creatures. For any of you in the southern United States, I hope you've had the chance to see manatees live. They're so magical and wonderful. I truly, professional detachment out the window, manatees rock. They're so fun. I'm so excited today that we get to talk about them because I think this is like the third or fourth time out of 3,600 broadcasts we've ever featured manatees. So very exciting, all good things. I'm going to stop talking for a minute and turn you over to Jess to blow our minds and get underway. Jess, so nice to have you today. Welcome to the broadcast.
Hey, how's it going?
It is so much fun. As I was saying beforehand, I don't know if you caught this. We've got classes in Georgia, Illinois, New Jersey, Maryland, Ontario, Alberta. I'm in Newfoundland. We are all over the continent to hear your story today. So I'm very excited.
That is awesome. That's exciting. I'm excited to share with you guys.
Yeah, no pressure at all. I promise. We're all on your side. Before we dive in with your presentation, I'm going to play a little Wild Hope clip just to set the stage a little bit, a little teaser from their episode, which, by the way, is entirely online. So if you want to see this full clip, I will send this to all our classes at the end. But Jess, let's kick it off with that for a sec, and we'll dive in with your talk after that. Sound good?
Perfect.
Amazing. All right, let me play this up. Let's do it.
Growing up in Crystal River was any child's dream. Manatees could come up here. There was plenty of food. We had a problem. There was no food for them to eat. And I just kept thinking, we can't leave it like this. We know what this river used to be, and we have to fix this.
I guess I first realized that a career working with seagrass and eelgrass would be something that I absolutely loved when I realized really everything depends on it. We have divers that go in and they hand vacuum the bottom, making sure that you remove all of this nasty algae. We have cleaned and uncovered over 800 spring vents in the Crystal River area. Crystal River is a huge success story. We have some of the healthiest manatees in the state.
Well, that was super cool. And I've got to say, when I was a kid, I got to go to the bottom of my pool and sort of scrub the scum off and vacuum that. And to be able to do that where you're saving manatees and bringing back epic habitat sounds so neat. So I'm not going to steal any more thunder. We'll turn over to your presentation. And if you want to dive in and take us away, you are good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad everybody is joining us to learn a little bit about manatees and really helping the environment that they depend on. And that's a good segue into what I do. And I'll introduce myself a little bit real quick. I think that animals is what I focus on. It's what I've grown up loving. So this is just me and critters. I am the environmental manager for a really awesome restoration company called Shoreline. I get to spend just hours and hours a day underwater, on the water, in the water with the turtles and the fish and the manatees and crabs. And octopus. It's never boring. There's always something new and exciting happening. So I lucked out when I got to follow my dreams and my passions and become a biologist and work in the state of Florida. So I know no pictures of manatees here, but I'll get there, I promise. So this is Florida for me when I'm not at work. I have a little farm and a son and a husband, and we grow food and we have chickens, and we really like being very connected with the earth and connected with the water. So that's just a little look into home life for me, and wild about animals. I have spent my whole entire life loving animals. I do wildlife rehab as well on the side. So I love to rehab animals that have been injured or orphaned and make them healthy and fat and happy and give them a chance to survive in the wild. So that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing outside of work. So jumping into work. Sea and shoreline aquatic restoration. So what we do is we find imperiled bodies of water. That means waterways that aren't healthy anymore. We look at what happened, what went wrong, and how we can fix it. And Sea and Shoreline has developed so many different building blocks in different systems, whether it's lakes or rivers or spring systems, or even lagoons, beaches, estuaries, all sorts of things, from the freshest of the fresh to the saltiest of the salt. We look at where things went wrong and how we can lend a helping hand. So let's see, this is going to be the first video trial. Jumping right into manatees here. This is a video that I actually took about 1.5 years ago in Crystal River, Florida, in a spring called Magnolia Springs. And what you guys see before the video plays, this is eelgrass. And this was basically the savior of this entire system, was being able to replace an invasive algae with a native submerged vegetation called eelgrass, and happens to be one of the favorite foods of the manatee. So let me see if this will work for you guys. Can you guys see it playing?
It's perfect. I love it.
This was the step one, making sure these videos work for you guys.
It's like a Christmas miracle every time it happens. I agree.
And so the manatees, they stick their nose along the bottom, and they don't have very good eyesight. They have very, very little eyes. Let's see if I'll get it to play again, and maybe you guys can see a little up close. And if you listen closely, you can hear them munching. So little tiny eyes. You can see all those little hairs along his face. He's feeling around on the bottom, using his front flippers and using his nose to push along the bottom and find good food. Now, before we had any restoration work done in Crystal River, there wasn't anything for the manatees to eat. We started off in a pretty sad place, and it didn't look like this. Let's see if I can figure out how to go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so a little science lesson real quick. So this is the theory of alternative stable states. And this is really what all of our research and restoration work is based upon. It's based upon this theory. And what it shows is that we have a body of water, which is A, that is a very healthy system, and then a body of water, B, which is an unhealthy system. And you can see the difference. Clean water, happy fish, vegetation growing, versus the unhealthy state where it's green and full of algae and just not healthy fish. There's really nothing going on in there. So what we see is we see 2 cups. And in each cup, if you were to drop a ball in it, it'd be pretty stable. But as things change, or as we apply outward pressure, so that means if we have farms pop up, or we have urban development like cities and roads and tourist attractions like big parks, all of those things start to make the healthy systems ball a little easier to push over into the unhealthy system. And you might not notice it when you look at the water, because it's not until we're already in that awful, dirty state that we realize that something has gone wrong. That's called our critical transition or our tipping point. Now, for Crystal River, we had a beautiful, clean system, and we had all of these outward pressures come in. We had dams built, we had seawalls built, we had canal systems dynamited, and big mansions built, golf courses, Publix and Target, and all sorts of farming. And then the nail in the coffin for Crystal River was something called the No Name Storm. And it was a huge hurricane that came through. Nobody knew it was coming. And what happened was it brought in a massive amount of salt water. Now, the grass that was living in Crystal River, because it's a freshwater spring-fed system, could not handle all of the salt water. So when we had that saltwater storm surge come in, all of the healthy grass that was there, it died off. And what was left was invasive plants. We had an invasive plant called hydrilla come in, and it grew so fast and so wild that it shaded out every bit of grass. And then we had an algae come in called Lingbia, and it was awful. It blanketed the bottom. So I'll show you that. This is Kings Bay in 2015. The entire bottom was covered in Lingbia. This is not a pretty system. This is not what anyone wanted to go swimming in. There wasn't any grass. And in turn, there really wasn't any life. So Sea and Shoreline came up with a process to fix it, because without any grass and without any life, we couldn't support our friends, the manatees. And really, no one wanted to spend time in the water. So we found out that if you plant grass on top of just walls and walls of soft, mucky mud, and a manatee comes by or a wave comes by, that grass gets pulled all the way out. The roots are gone, everything's gone. But we found out if we can use a vacuum to suck out all of that soft sediment, all of that algae, all of that detrital, yucky gunk on the bottom, and get to a nice sandy bottom and plant grass, then the grass has a chance to build a root system. And that root system has something strong to hold on to. And then when the manatees or the turtles or the waves come by, we don't lose the whole plant. It's just like a lawnmower. We don't lose everything. We just trim the top. And it leaves the rest of the grass to grow another day. So I'll show you a little bit about our vacuuming process. This is what we call our vacuum pump. It's got big hoses. It does not look anything like what you would think for a restoration project. It's noisy and it doesn't look pretty, and it definitely doesn't look natural. But what happens is we take these hoses and they go into the water, and then we have smaller hoses connected to it, and we have divers that jump down in the water and they hold on to the front of those hoses. They're down there for 4 to 8 hours a day. And what they're doing is usually they can't see anything. So they have to feel around, and they're feeling by hand to make sure that they're getting all of that nasty soft sediment out, all of that algae, and they're leaving a nice solid bottom for the plants to grow on. And that is what it looks like. So this is a diver, and he's got a big full face mask on. He's breathing from air that's supplied from the surface through the hoses that are attached to his body and his mask. And he's using that hose to suck all the algae up. Now, what happens with that algae, because it's so full of nutrients, is it becomes fertilizer. So it doesn't even go to waste. We take all of that algae, it gets sucked through those big hoses back into a bag. It's almost like you were to use a vacuum at home. And if you were to empty that vacuum, there'd be all sorts of nasty stuff in it. Well, we vacuum everything up. It gets put into giant bags. And then with the giant bags, we dry them out, because there's going to be water coming through. There's going to be mud coming through. Sometimes there's cell phones and sunglasses that come through. There's all sorts of stuff that come up in the vacuum. But when we've separated everything and we have just the muck and the algae and we dry it out, we get to truck it over to a farm, and it becomes fertilizer. Because if you've ever been to Florida, you know that there's a lot of sand. Even if you've seen pictures of Florida, we have a lot of sand. and the sand does not have nutrients. So it's not great for growing crops. So this way, we don't have to add outside fertilizers to our soils to grow vegetables. We just use what's already here, what's already in the system, and we recycle it. After we suck up all of that nasty algae, then comes the fun part, the rock star of the project itself, which is the grass. So this is eelgrass, and it doesn't look super exciting. It's very exciting for me. I didn't go to school and think that I was going to really fall in love with seagrass or eelgrass. But when you realize that all of these animals within a system depend on it, from your little tiny invertebrates, your crabs, your shrimps, your snails, all of those, all the way up to your big fish, your dolphins, your manatees, your turtles, even the birds above the water that feed on all of those things, and snakes. Most people don't like snakes, but snakes, we have a lot of water snakes, and they depend on this system as well. They need little fish to eat. So this grass is really, it's the hero of the story. Being able to plant it and protect it, that's a big part. So what happens is we take 5,000 plants in an acre and we put it in the ground. And then if you see that big metal cage in the corner, what we call that is an herbivory exclusion device. If you guys know what an herbivore is, something that eats plants. And we have lots of herbivores, the biggest being our manatees. Now, it might seem mean to plant the grass and then cover it with a cage so the manatee can't get to it. But that allows the grass time to establish a root system. We want to make sure that before we let the manatees munch on it, it has time for its roots to start growing into the ground, for it to really take hold. And that way it can withstand the manatees pulling on it and chomping on it. And that way it can continue to grow and make baby plants. Each one, so that tiny little plant right in the center, that plant can grow up to 7 feet in any direction in just 1 year's time. So we leave those cages on the plants for 1 whole year. And by that point in time, the grass has grown outside of the cages, above the cages, crawling along the bottom, and the manatees have snacks already. And then we remove the cages and it's like a salad bar. So let's see if this works. This is what planting process looks like.
It's clear that with this restoration work, we're not just revitalizing this underwater environment, we're preserving the biodiversity of this aquatic ecosystem for future generations. Below us, we find a spot, a sandy patch in the riverbed that's about to become the foundation of new life. This simple act might seem modest against the backdrop of murky waters, but it's a critical step in restoring the iconic Crystal River. Soon, with these restoration efforts and a little luck, this area will transform into a vibrant seagrass bed once again, a home to manatees where they can feed, rest, survive, and thrive for years to come.
Did that work?
It did indeed. It's perfect, Jess.
All right. So that was a really cool experience. We had Jeff Corwin come out and see if I can make you go to the next one. And he got to experience some of the planting process with us as well. You know, he's a wildlife biologist and an expert in a lot of things, but he had never planted seagrass before. So we got to take him out into the beautiful Crystal River and show him just how important the project is, especially for a home for the manatees. So I talked about the cages, and this is why we protect the cages. We talked about the herbivory pressure, which is the manatees and the turtles and any other creature that might want to snack on some grass, which you'd find it a little crazy, but we do this in all sorts of places. And sometimes we have fields that have farms that back up to the bodies of water that they have cows in them. And even the cows will come into the water and start munching on the eelgrass. So we're not just strictly to water animals. Even the land animals like to get in on the eelgrass snacks. So one of the other reasons that we protect it is because of people. We all know that we can cause some big problems. It's how we got here. So lots and lots of boaters use these beautiful bodies of water. And when we plant these plants, we have to protect them, because if people are stepping on the bottom, that can kill the leaves. And without the leaves, the plants can't get sunlight. And without sunlight, the plants just can't grow. Really, when we say the leaves are gone, we say we've taken away the engine. The engine is gone and the plants can't grow anymore. Another reason is anchors. So in order for you to keep your boat in one place, you've got to throw an anchor down. There are a bunch of different types of anchors, but the traditional Danforth anchors that dig into the ground like a big old fort, they can pull up to 3 square feet of seagrass every single time you throw it in and pull it out. And we have thousands of boats that come through every single weekend. So it was very important for us to find a way to protect the grass from everything from people's feet to the anchors. And we've got stingrays too. And it might seem crazy because I said that this is fresh water up here where the manatees are living in Crystal River, but we have connections to the Gulf of Mexico. And the stingrays are not afraid to come up and spend some time in the fresh water. So they like to use their wings and flap along the bottom, and in turn, they can uproot all of our plants. So we, once again, want to make sure that all of those eelgrass plants have a chance to be established and have a nice, strong root system before we let all of these animals and all of these limiting factors go full force on the baby eelgrass plants. So we also have to maintain those cages. So you'll see the picture that just looks awful without maintenance, covered in algae. And we talked about the fact that plants need sunlight to grow. And there is no way you're getting an ounce of sunlight through a cage that's covered in algae. So every single month, we have a team of divers that go into the water and they scrub the cages with a brush. And just like the divers that were sucking up algae, they use air that's coming through a hose that's at the surface. So we don't dive with tanks. Tanks are bulky and you have to refill them all the time. We use what's called a surface supplied air system, and it's like a little motor, and it looks almost like a little chainsaw motor attached to a floating tube, and it sits there and floats on the surface with a dive flag sticking up, and it gives us enough oxygen to continue to scrub all these cages. And sometimes we'll have 1,000 cages to scrub in a week, and it's a lot of work, but along with what we were talking about earlier, outside of the work factor, there's so many critters that you get to see while you're down there. And the longer the grass is growing, the cleaner the water becomes, the more manatees we get to see, the more turtles come in. So it's really a cool experience to be able to dive down into the water and really not have a care in the world. Do some spring cleaning and get to hang out with the manatees while you do it. So this is a good picture of what we talked about the before and what it looks like after. So we talked about the fact that an algae-dominated system that's an imperiled body of water. That's a system that we want to fix. And that's what Kings Bay looked like before we started the restoration project. And now we've been doing this for over 8 years, and we've got a plant-dominated system. Why does it even matter? We all know that manatees matter. That is a good way for us to get people to care about grass, because most people, if you try and get them to care about eelgrass, doesn't seem like anything very interesting. But you throw an animal like the charismatic manatee into the mix, and people love them. They're cute, they're cuddly, they're endangered. People want to protect them. So we want to make sure that they protect their habitat as well. So Kings Bay Crystal River is so important because it is the second largest spring system in the state of Florida. It pumps out so much, millions and millions of gallons of fresh water. Not only fresh water, but warm water. It's 72 degrees year round coming out of the springs. And manatees are not fat. Looks like they are, but they're actually quite muscular. And they do not have any of that blubber that a whale or a dolphin would have to keep them warm in the winter months. So they travel up Crystal River and into the Kings Bay spring system to sit on those nice warm jacuzzi springs all winter long. And that's one of the main reasons that we want to make sure that Kings Bay has plenty of eelgrass, because if we don't have grass here, then the manatees will have to risk getting cold and stressed, and it can actually lead to them getting disoriented, lost, and eventually dying. So what we want to do is make sure that there's a full salad bar all year long for the manatees to stay close to the springs so they don't have to risk getting cold and lost. So where are we now? With Crystal River in particular, we have removed over 550 million pounds of Lyngbia algae, detrital material from all of those dead-end canals. We've restored over 100 acres of grass. So that means we have planted 100 acres, over 500,000 little plants that I showed you guys pictures of. We removed those nutrients, 99% of the phosphorus that was in the system. When we remove it, it's gone. It's out of the system. And we've actually opened up spring vents. I've got a video coming up. I'll get to show you guys what it looks like when we uncover a spring vent. Because quite often, if you think about just mountains of laundry on your floor and you're looking for your AirPods, well, it's kind of like that with a spring vent. We just dig, remove as much as we can. We clean up as much as we can until all of a sudden you find that magical moment where you found your AirPods, you found a spring vent. Pretty cool. So this is a picture of the Kings Bay system. All of that green area is an area where grass has naturally spread from the yellow area. The yellow area is the 100 acres of grass that we planted. So we think that that's pretty cool. It's a successful project. It means that what we started to do is now taking on the system all by itself. It needed a little boost, but now it's starting to take care of itself because of that little stepping stone we gave. And we're not done yet. So we did phases 1 through 4, and we finished it by the 4th of July last year. That was Crystal River's centennial celebration, 100-year birthday. Now we're moving down the river because there's so much material that's built up in a lot of these man-made canals that we want to make sure that the eelgrass that naturally spreads and that we plant is going to be able to hold on for the next storm event or the next influx of manatees that we have. Let me see if I get this one to play.
Third time's the charm. I think we're
right.
going so far.
This is a spring system called Hunter Springs. Now, it is one of the largest spring vents that we have in Crystal River in the Kings Bay system. And we have the known spring vent that everybody swims in. There's a big swimming hole around it. But just 50 feet away, we actually went in there and vacuumed back in November. No one knew this was here. We removed 5 feet of mud and detrital material to open up this 8.5-foot long spring vent. So that is one of the treasures that we were able to uncover with the vacuum work that we do. And because those spring vents are pumping warm water, that just gives the manatees one more place to hang out all winter long. Let's see. I don't know if this one's going to work. I can try it, but it may not.
We'll try it, Jess. And then when we're done, just a quick note, we've got about 12, 13 minutes left for the whole broadcast entirely. We do have a Kahoot to play. So if after this,
you can skip this one.
Wrap up, that's just let you know.
This is the only one that wasn't connected to the PowerPoint. For some reason, I just couldn't get it connected. So we'll skip this one. But if you guys are interested in looking, there's another channel called Discover Florida channel that did a really cool little documentary, a little piece on the restoration project. And you guys, I wanted to show this one to you because it gives you a good view of the dredging process. So our divers suiting up, jumping in the water, looking at the Lyngbia, sucking it all up. So it's just another thing that you guys can check out. And that's the end of that.
Sorry, I didn't know it was the very last thing. I'll make sure that our classes have that documentary so I can send that to our groups after the broadcast and we can make sure they have that video as in addition to the full Wild Hope one.
Awesome.
That was marvelous. And if you want to come out of screen share so you can see us again finally and have a bit of a conversation, we'll start with our Kahoot together with all our kids, and then we are going to dive in with Q&A. We'll start with Mom's class. We'll go to our Ackworth group to begin. Robert Morris School and Avoca West, we're coming to you, and then YouTubers in Oregon and beyond. We're so excited to have you on as well. So many kids from across the continent. Well, to begin, and Jess, you're probably new to Kahoot. For those who are new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. And what you win is Jess and I's everlasting respect, which I think is pretty cool. So we're going to play along with this. If you want to give us hints for any of these as we go through, we'd love to have sort of any assistance from your expertise as we go. 4 questions, and then we're heading to our Christian school first. Our first question, you actually did not cover, but I've always wanted to have this question in a program. It's one of my favorite things in animal relationships in the world. What is the closest relative of the manatee? Sea lion, elephant, cow, or whale? Maybe some of them are to throw you off. Maybe some of them are outlandishly true. We're going to find out together in about 8 seconds. I've seen manatees live. I've seen this closest relative, and you can see it once you hear it. So it is elephant. It is not sea lion. In fact, a lot of the things that are oceanic or water-going creatures that you'd think might be related because they're in the water, mammals like sea lions, whales, manatees, they're all in completely different groups. So they all have quite different closest relatives. Elephant is our correct answer. And I encourage everyone also to look up a creature called a hyrax, Hyrax, which is also related and also looks nothing like either of those two. Expert Jaguar takes our lead as we go to question 2. What's the big threat to manatees in Crystal River? Now, when you look up threats to manatees worldwide, there are a lot. But specifically, we talked about a lot today. Predation by sharks, illicit pet trade, loss of eelgrass to feed on, or plague. We actually did have plague as one of our leading conservation threats to black-footed ferrets earlier in this series, which is unexpected. You don't hear plague very often anymore.
No.
It's not our manatee one, though, which is, of course, loss of eelgrass to feed on. Most of you got this right. Way to go, everybody. I think if a shark tried to attack a manatee, the manatee would just slap it.
Yeah, they are very muscular.
Yes, and they can weigh up to, in our third question, 300 pounds, 500 pounds, 800 pounds, 1,200 pounds. A hint that it might be more than maybe the biggest one here. I just wanted to keep it within the realm of goodness. What do we think? 42 answers in so far.
Yes, so, they eat up to 10% of their body weight per day, and that's over 100 pounds. So
that's crazy. Jess, when I was looking online, I want your input on this. How big is the biggest one that you've ever seen or worked with? This 1,300 pounds is sort of the limit that I saw in a lot of things online about this.
So when I was in school, I did volunteer at a marine laboratory down in Sarasota, and they had a very large female. I don't remember. I think she was over 2,000 pounds.
Wow.
She was the largest captive one.
Holy. That's when you're eating 200 pounds of food a day, which is more than I weigh. So I don't want to
get enough exercise for sure.
Classy Bison is barely in our lead as we go to question 4, our final question before we're heading to Ackworth for our first Q&A. So this is a multi-select, so it is more than one answer, and we also didn't cover this. I just wanted to mess with you guys. I had a lot of fun making this Kahoot today. Manatees live on which continent? So we talked about Florida today a lot. So North America, Florida. Where else can we find them? South America, Africa, Europe, all of them, some of those, more than one. This is I got to say, for all animals I've ever seen, I'm a biologist by background, they have a really interesting distribution, manatees, as a group. So they're in North American rivers and on the coast, they're in South American rivers and on the coast, and they're in West African rivers and on the coast. And that's amazing. So Europe, alas, none in Europe. But for those of you who got the other 3, way to go. Let's see what that does to our podium together, Jess. And then we're heading to Miss Bakchi's class. Magic Otter in 3rd. Rational Tiger in 2nd. Maybe it'll be a manatee name first. I always love when that happens. It's the bell. Classy Bison for the win. If you are Classy Bison, let us know who you are in the chat. But let's head to Miss Bakchi's group. Come on in and take us away, guys. Hey.
All right. We have a couple of questions from the audience.
They can't see.
Talk louder and stand up and move over.
How many years have you been working there for?
Yeah.
I have been working with Sea and Shoreline doing this manatee and seagrass restoration work for just over 3 years. But before that, I got to work with the state of Florida's marine fisheries management. And before that, I worked for Moat Marine Laboratory down in Sarasota. And that was a fun job. I got to work with manatees, next to manatees, and dolphins. So I've done some manatee adjacent work as well.
Manatee adjacent is a phrase you don't hear in many other broadcasts other than Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So thank you for that very much. We will come back for a second question with your class. We're going to head to Southbound Brook for a second Robert Morris School. Come on in New Jersey, guys, and take us away.
Hi, guys.
All right, I know.
What do you think?
Be quiet so you can hear her.
What do you think would be the result if you guys did not remove the algae?
What would the result be if we did not remove the algae? That is a great question, and you have a very good science mind, that's for sure. So that's something that we know. We had 8 years ago 2 experimental pilot projects in Crystal River. One of them we removed the algae, and the other one we did not. And we did the same planting process. We planted grass in the same density, and we protected it with cages. And in the areas where we removed the cages after there was no algae removal, the manatees came in and they were very happy to eat all of the grass, but none of the roots stayed because the algae was so soft that the roots couldn't hold on tight enough, and the entire plant left the ground rather than just the tips of the plant. So great question.
Great question and cool research. I love when science does like a control to see how things work out. We see a lot of that with deer back when I used to live in Ontario, where they'd like block off
Just
one
like
spot
that.
and leave another, and it's radically different. Very cool. Avoca West, we're gonna head to Glenview, Illinois. Come on in, grade 3's on lunch, and take us away. Hey.
Is your favorite animal the manatee?
Ooh, that's a hard question.
No
I
pressure.
have so many animals that I love, but I think my favorite animals would have to be raccoons. They also depend on a really happy, healthy environment. They love fish and crabs and clams, and they're very adaptive. They can live anywhere.
Jess, I'm Torontonian by background, and like raccoons are like our biggest nemesis as a city. So to hear someone be like, they're my favorite is just unheard of. So thank you for that counter narrative. We're going to head to YouTube for a quick question, then we're going back to Miss Bakshi's class. Miss Evans joining us in Northeast Oregon wants to know, what's the lifespan of a manatee and how often do they have calves?
Ooh, that is a very good question. So one of the oldest manatees died when he was in his 60s, and he actually lived down here in the state of Florida at the Bishop Museum. So they do have calves every couple of years. Typically, a single calf stays with the mother for 2+ years. Usually, they do not have a second calf during that time period, but occasionally they do. And that's when you'll see a mommy working overtime. She'll have a brand new baby, and then the one that's just around 2.5 years old that hasn't quite been ready to leave just yet. So yeah, they live into their 60s. Their biggest threat outside of loss of food is boat strikes. They do happen to get hit by boats, and that obviously reduces the average lifespan of manatees by a great deal.
Good amount, yeah. Thank you for the nuanced answer. That was spectacular. And we're going to do 4 more questions in our final few minutes here together on Miss Bakshi's class. I'm heading back to you in Georgia. Take us away.
Hey. We have 2 questions that can be combined into one.
Perfect. Let's do it.
I was wondering how long it took to clean up all the algae.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, how much algae have you picked up?
Cool.
Oh, great question. So we have been removing algae for over 8 years in Crystal River, and we have removed over 500 million pounds. So that's 500 million. Crazy.
That is crazy. I really didn't think it was going to be even like in the realm of that. That is such an unusual question. So thank you for that very much. Jeez, good for you. Wow. I'm going to take a quick YouTube one, and then we're going to wrap up with our 2 live classes. Miss Mass Group wants to know, do they have any fish cleaners? Do they have any partners in the animal world that come and like maybe pick their teeth like some sharks or whales or other things have?
So they do have some fish cleaning friends, and it doesn't have to be just a single species. When we're in the springs all winter long, we have mangrove snappers that are up in the springs, and quite often you'll see manatees come in from the saltwater that have been traveling and that have grown barnacles on their backs. And we'll have sheep's head and mangrove snapper up in the springs that will pick all of those barnacles off of the manatee's back. Within a a couple of days of being in the freshwater system, surrounded by all of these fish. Their backs are clean. Then also in the saltwater setting, we have remoras, just like you have remoras on sharks, but really they're there to clean up the fact that they're just messy eaters. So if the manatees are munching around in the seagrass, they're going to make a big old mess. They're going to be moving the bottom around. There's going to be crustaceans and crabs and little tiny invertebrates floating up out of the grass. And quite often those remoras will swim right by their face and snatch up whatever they can.
Jess, I wish someone would clean the barnacles off my back. It's so hard to reach, and no one's offered in ages. It really sucks. Lucky the manatees. We're going to head to New Jersey, and then we'll wrap up in Illinois in a minute. A quick note for everyone. I will be featuring to all your teachers our Wild Hope series. If you want to catch the rest of these programs, see the ones we've done in the past. They're all on our YouTube channel, as this one will be forever too. And wildhope.tv if you want to see Jess's full episode. Dive in even more literally and figuratively with her amazing manatee work. And Shoreline.com got to feature that as well. So do check out the incredible work her and your team are up to. Robert Morris School, we're heading back to you. Come on in.
What invasive species are a threat to manatees?
Say that again?
Are invasive species a threat to manatees?
Are there any other species that are a threat to manatees?
Okay. Outside of humans, there really aren't any other species that are a threat to the manatees. So we don't have a lot of large sharks that live in areas where manatees live, because manatees eat grass. Grass needs light, which means that it's going to be shallow areas that the manatees are going to be living in. Because if it's too deep, there's not enough light that gets to the bottom. Therefore, there's no grass growing and the manatees have no food. So no big sharks are around to snack on manatees. And then we do have a lot of alligators in some of these systems where manatees and alligators cohabitate. But you got to think, manatees are pretty big, over 1,000 pounds. And if an alligator wants a meal, it's not going to be an easy meal if it's a manatee. So they really don't have any natural predators other than humans and boats and loss of food and habitat.
I never thought about it that way, but we've talked about hippos and crocs a lot in the programs that we do, and it's a very similar sort of setup where people are like, oh, don't they eat the hippos? It's like, no, the hippo's way bigger. That would go equally poorly for everyone involved. So just
exactly
live in the same spot, hang out in different areas. Avoca West, grade 3s, come on in to wrap us up. Thank you all so much, audience. I'm going to stick around. Please do stick around because we'll have a big thank you and farewell at the end. But Illinois, wrap us up.
Have you ever cleaned the cages yourself before?
Oh, yes. It's one of my favorite things to do. So cleaning, I don't love cleaning, but I love cleaning the cages because you get to go down there in the water, and oftentimes we have pretty weather, and as the grass starts to establish, just like the background behind me, the water gets clear. And when I'm cleaning the cages, just like the remoras and the little fish come to help clean up all of the stuff that's floating around the manatee's face, when I scrub the cages, usually a lot of curious fish come in to check out what we're doing. Even manatees will check us out. We'll be in the water, scrubbing the cages, and the manatees will just be like sneaking right behind us, following us, trying to figure out what we're doing. So I have cleaned the cages. It's one of my favorite things to do. Never have to worry about having to do paperwork. I love being in the water and swimming.
I say this not facetiously. I would love to have had the opportunity to do this before I got this job. Years ago when I was out of school, I applied for a job cleaning cages at a local animal rescue, and they said, you don't have enough experience. I was like, come on, I really want to. So alas, lucky you. This is true of all our zoo audience as well, our partners. It's amazing how much conservation work involves cleaning. So if you're keen on it, this could be a cool role for you. Jess, thank you so much for your time, passion, expertise, all of it today. Before we bring in the classes to say goodbye, is there any last message you want to leave us with about your work, manatees, anything to wrap up the day?
You know what? I want to thank everybody for coming and joining us. And I also want to let everyone know that if you guys have a passion for the outdoors or for the water or for the wildlife, don't think that it's not a good way to go. There's always something that you can do. And if you think of a problem that you might see in your environment, you're probably not the only one. You might be the only one that's ready to speak up and do something about it. But more than likely, there's going to be a lot of people out there to support your efforts and to support what you're doing. So really, it does just take one person to get started on a beautiful restoration project like this. So if you guys have ideas, don't be afraid to throw them out there. Don't be afraid to chase your dreams, even if it does involve swimming with manatees and alligators and crocodiles.
Jess, I certainly want to leave my job and come join you immediately. I might need to get on the next flight. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, for joining Ms. Bakshi's class, Robert Morris School, Avoca West. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.